It's about the Ondo State House of Assembly. Mr. President, you will recall that in recent times, we have had issues with several legislative arms, state legislatures in the country. You will remember that of Kogi and, of course, the recent one, Akwa Ibom. There was also the Benue one. This is also another one. It's from Ondo State House of Assembly. At a particular point in time, the legislature decided that they were going to change their presiding officers. And they did so. It's a legislature of 26 members. And 18 of them signed to remove the presiding officers. And of course, they were sworn in, and they held the first sitting. But immediately after, as they got into the office to hold a plenary session, thugs were asked to invade, at least invaded, and most of them were beaten. Some of them are currently in hospital in Lagos. One of them has a head injury and is being treated at the St. Nicholas Hospital in Lagos. The woman that was originally in charge also sustained a broken arm. She's currently also in hospital. The vehicles of most of them were damaged, and up till now, they have been refused entry into the chambers. As of today, there are armored personnel carriers manning the entrances to the legislature. Only 8 people are allowed to be part of that legislature. Mr. President, an injury to one should be an injury to all, because this is the legislative arm, and I am bringing this before the Senate so that it can be looked into and proper action taken. But for now, Mr. President, I believe the police should allow the House to sit. There is nothing that says policemen should prevent legislators from their lawful duties. Right now, they are being prevented. Most of them cannot even sleep in their homes. They are being hounded. Thugs are running after them. Mr. President, we need to do justice to this, just like we did to the other legislative arms. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
My leader, on this, I will say, breach of democracy. And I really want to urge my colleagues and all of us not to turn a blind eye to what goes on in the state houses of assembly. I don't think Ondo State is the only one. There have been several incidences recently, starting from Akwa Ibom and some other states. What it does is that if we do not groom our democracy in any of the states, I do not think that our democracy in the center will also survive. So I wish to join her to urge our assembly to really take a look at the incidents and find out who actually is preventing people from sitting. If the legislators at the state level are unable to sit, how would they be able to carry out the functions of the state? What it will mean is that you're giving a free hand to the executive in the state to do whatever they feel like without the oversight of the State Assembly as the Constitution prescribes. And so I continue to support that we take a very, very close look at the goings-on in the Ondo State House of Assembly. Thank you.
Senator
I'm from Ondo State, and under normal circumstances, I should raise this issue. But for some reasons, I decided not to raise it. What she said is very correct. But the most disappointing thing about it is that the brutality that occurred and, occurred right under the supervision of the Nigerian police, under the supervision of the Commissioner of Police in the state. And I think it is very important for us as a state to ensure, as my distinguished colleague said, to protect the sanctity of democracy and our assemblies, both at the state and at the national level. I therefore support that the investigations will be carried out to find out the reason why this happened. I believe that members of the assembly have the right to change the leadership if they feel that that is the right thing to do. And in doing so, I don't think anybody, an external body, has the right to stop them and to vent brutality and violence on them. So, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I want to invite you to join us in calling for the right thing to be done, investigation into the cause and the way it has been handled by the state government. Thank you, Mr. President.
Deputy Senate President.
The rest of my colleagues in condemning any act that will stop a parliamentarian in Nigeria or elsewhere from having access to the chambers of that parliament in order to perform his legislative duties. Since 1999, we've had incidents of parliamentarians being hindered from doing their job, sometimes on the authority of state governors, sometimes colleagues, because of disagreement, they managed to shut down the chambers of various legislative houses. And recently we've seen labor union and sometimes the security agencies made efforts to ensure that members of the parliament do not have access to the chambers to perform their legislative duties. On account of this, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, we recall that in 2017, this National Assembly took steps to prevent such occurrence. And graciously, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria signed that bill into law. Regrettably, the same problem continued, just because we've not taken the step to implement that law, to get some people prosecuted on account of it. Because it's unacceptable for Nigerians to elect their leaders, to make laws for them, and some people conspire to ensure that that doesn't happen. I will just quickly go into the provision of the Legislative Houses Powers and Privileges Act 2017, specifically as it relates to stopping parliamentarians from doing their work. Section 8(2) says, a person who hinders the movement of a member of a legislative house into the chambers or precincts of a legislative house commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 100,000 naira or a term of imprisonment for 6 months or both. I think this time has come for us to ensure the implementation of these provisions of this particular act, as it relates not only to the State Assembly, but also the National Assembly. Parliamentarians must be given opportunity to come and disagree among themselves. They'll be able to debate and sometimes agree. But a situation where a member of the parliament is not allowed to have access to chambers is completely unacceptable. So the police need to know the provisions of this act, the authorities need to know this, the governors need to know, and even ourselves parliamentarians must acquaint ourselves with the provisions of this act. And I think basically until somebody is sent to jail for doing this what we are discussing today, I'm sure that it will continue. So I join the rest in condemning what happened in Ondo. But on a word of caution, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, in this parliament, I think it was in the 7th Assembly, there was a motion such as this. We were informed that a particular legislative house was besieged by a security agency, I think the SSS. And then we sent a delegation to go and investigate what happened. And it turned out that there was no such thing. So I just want to prevail on us that while we're condemning this, it is also important that in coming to conclusion that we may have to send some people to find out exactly what happened. I believe the distinguished senator who raised this, but I think for purposes of making sure that we have the information correct, then it is important as well that we need to find out exactly what happened for us to take an appropriate action. I don't know exactly what the prayers is, but I think that for us to take the final decision on this issue, it is also important that we find out what happened by sending a delegation to that particular legislative house and report back within the next 48 hours so that we'll be in a proper position to take the right decision.
Yes, Senator Shafa.
My distinguished colleagues, I'm Senator Benga Shafa representing Lagos Senatorial District. I equally rise to join my colleagues in condemning the brutality meted out to members of the public and the legislators in Ondo. However, I would like to mention that something has to be done in terms of seeing through whatever reports that come as a result of whatever investigation we are doing. I'm saying this because when the issue of Akwa Ibom happened, the upper legislative house was seen as being unnecessarily biased. But this government in Ondo is APC-controlled state. So we must act with dexterity and ensure that the public knows that whatever decision is taken at the upper chamber or the National Assembly is taken in the overall interest of all Nigerians. Thank you.
Okay, just to come out.
Investigating the fact of the matter. There was, last 2 weeks, there was issue like this from Calabar, from Akwa Ibom, sorry, in which there were conflicting facts. Up to now, we don't even know what happened. Like the previous speaker said, Senator Ashapa, that it was divided into political lines because the assumption was that the PDP is in government there and some of the legislators have become from PDP to APC. Today we have an all APC crisis. So before we go on condemning, because the integrity of the Senate is at stake here whenever we just stand up and start condemning things without necessarily verifying the facts. First of all, when there are issues like this, what we should do first is to set an investigative committee so that we get the facts before we go on condemning this. So, Mr. Senate President, honorable colleagues, this is the season when we will continue to have this kind of crisis coming from various, and we all know is as politicians, we know for one reason or another these are going to come up. So for us to stand our ground and for us to be seen to be fair to each and every Nigerian and every party member, we have to first of all investigate our facts before condemning. Thank you very much.
Our prayer is that we made a committee on police. I think they're the one that did last time. Committee on police to investigate the matter and report back to us on their findings. Those in favor of the additional prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, unfortunately we're back again on this issue of these unfortunate incidents happening at state assemblies. As stated, we're seeing Benue, Kogi, Akwa Ibom, and now Ondo. I remember when we were discussing Akwa Ibom, I said categorically we should be seen to be strongly condemning this kind of acts, and we should be non-partisan on this, that it could happen to be any side of the divide. As we all know, our democracy is defined by the legislative arm. And the moment the legislative arm does not exist or does not function, then truly we're not practicing democracy. And we must stand very strongly on these kind of issues. I believe that our democracy by now should not be seeing incidents like this, where people still believe that you can use a minority number to destabilize the parliament. It should not be. We should not condone it. We should totally. And as the Deputy Senate President, we must begin to take actions that people will know what the sanction is when you prevail. The law is there, and I think it's time that we make an example of one or two people who have been seen to disregard the law and have threatened our democracy. We must protect the sanctity of this our democracy. It's so key. And we cannot also continue to support where security agencies are being used for this kind of act. The Committee on the Police should investigate this and come back to us urgently to find out the reasons. But in the meantime, the security personnel, by a resolution, should allow the House to sit and allow all members access to the chambers. Chairman, Police, we directed you last time on Akwa Ibom to give us a report within a time frame. Where are we on that?
Thank you, Mr. President.